Welcome back to session 56. First, let me apologize for the noise in the last session in the background, which was caused by my, I think, probably 10-year-old Sony laptop. I forgot to turn it down. So please accept my apology for that noise. It's probably annoying. So anyway, in last session, we mentioned about the uh, decision making for actions or inactions in long term consideration, in hopefully, a consistency to be established, or otherwise, in lack of the consistency, we would definitely need good contingency, plans as well. And so, in that regard, I would like to extend a little more into the apparent, um, things that we could relate to, regardless of whether you're American, you're not American, you're in the States, or you're, sitting somewhere outside the United States and looking at what's going on in America, and basically the impact around the world with the American policy, if we can even call that, for what's going on in the White House and the all the impacts. So basically, I guess it's not about really Democrat or Republican. For me, just for any state, any country, a government should stay within a clear policy, in credible consistency, so that other governments would have the, a good reason to trust this government to take your word for it. Or, at the beginning, they may be shocked. Oh, wow. And then a few times over, people get used to it. It's like, oh, this is just another guy, just, basically say things and do things at impulse, feel like, or, whatever seems the right thing to do at the time, and then, turn around in a couple of hours or a couple of days, totally reverse. And so when this thing happens, the American government lose its credibility before foreign governments, regardless the allies or the adversaries. Either way, just no credit at all. So when you also, take into account that the American supposedly, as a leader, set up a lot of rules, in international communities, and now become the first one to violate all those rules, and even worse, basically just, get the U.S. out of all the international treaties and international conventions and the organizations, basically not to be, binding, basically avoid the binding, of the obligations and duties, and basically in the name of what? Make America great again, America first. But then think about this. When you are so busy, at wars with just about everybody, allies or adversaries alike, trade wars, whatever, just whatever got me so unhappy, I will just, make sure you understand that I'm not happy, and I'll send a message, whatever that is. So this is totally in lack of consistency. And of course, if you excuse yourself and expect others to excuse yourself because, hey, I'm not a politician, I don't obey the political rules, I pretty much just reinvent the whole game and, introduce new rules. Okay, if that makes sense, maybe, just maybe, people can get used to it. But the problem is, You keep changing the rules and you don't obey your own rules, even, the rules you just recently set, and then you go back on your words on it. Um, I don't know how seriously the allies and the adversaries and the in-betweens, could take your words for it, whatever you meant, and people get confused, right? So when that personal behavior, came from a presidential position and, basically expressed in behalf of a government of the biggest, the most powerful country in the world, that is just not something people expect, right? So here we're talking about consistency. And let's think about it. When the message, sent out in mixed signals to the same party on different things, how do you expect the leadership in those countries, react to you in consistency? So basically, when you demand actions from the other side in response to your actions, the other side probably just going up to, sitting this one through, so elect no actions or inaction and just see, what's going to happen. Because, if they respond, promptly, and then you, basically reverse your position or change your position, inclining to the left or to the right, forward or backward, they can't afford to keep it up, with you on your prompt changes in every direction and in such a, big range. So this is something about consistency, right? So if you're at that level, basically looking at the big pictures, but then you are not really respecting the rules of the consistency required by the policies, and you are the one making the policies for everybody, right? As the president of the United States, and who is expected to take a leadership role in international politics. But instead you become the one just create all the chaos and destroy the orders maintained by the United States government for so long, for so many years, throughout so many administrations, and then you just open your mouth and criticize all the administrations before you, and you're the only one single-handedly credible for all the good things happen. Whether that's true or not, I guess up for the validations by the other people. It's just not a big picture. I'm not trying to promote certain political stance, to influence on the, I guess, election coming up. But personally, I don't think I can afford, vote for that guy. Basically, we won't have a international society or community, remain in good order, and where the U.S. has been traditionally taking the lead, since World War II, and I see no reason the U.S. give up on that leadership role and leave the world in a chaos. I'm not saying the world cannot live without the U.S., but basically, when or before an old order, becomes obsolete, a new order has to be ready to step in and replace, and that's contingency. So, do we have that contingency plan? Well, I guess almost everybody is looking at the rise of China. Is China ready to fill in and take over that leadership role? Not everybody, I guess, thinks so. Does China think so? I have no idea about that. But if nobody is ready and capable and willing to take that role, and the U.S. is not, you know, clearly in that position anymore, that leaves the international community, in a state of chaos. And let's look at the, domestic situation in the United States too. This polarization is actually kind of, encouraged by the presidential speeches, publicly given here and there, and I guess deep division of this nation. It's very clearly inside. So unless something is done to, stop all this nonsense, the quick racial label or whatever else, basically to have the people on the left and people on the right both, up to the extremes, and not to, have their opinions, their voice heard, peacefully through the peaceful demonstration, but rather now we're seeing people on both sides, threatening with violence. And, what is the problem of this country? I think everybody has opinions. I personally have my opinions too. And I thought, this country is all about the freedom. So what I think may not be the mainstream, thought, as a perfect fit, but I should have my rights to express what I think. And so does everybody in America, do. But this country, I would say, I'm just going to be very frank today. I think the mainstream media has been pretty much dominated and so biased towards the, the left-wing liberals. And of course, they have the rights to say whatever they want, except for they always claim that they are not biased, and they are, neutral. Well, I guess that leaves for everybody else to decide if that is true or not. But do you think the mainstream media actually covers and loyally reflect all different opinions of different, social groups of this society? I don't think so. But again, that's just me, right? Was that inconsistency? Yes, very consistent in the past few, decades. Were there any changes? Yes. The first time I think the major change was right after 9/11. And of course, we all feel in America that the people were, rallied by the solidarity. But nevertheless, the American media became almost like censored. You flip channels between different networks. They all sounded the same. And then, of course, since I guess the sitting president in the White House, took over, we heard a lot about fake news, which, I think that could be true, partially. And whether true or not, certainly I believe it was selected, partial truths in American mainstream media. But then, of course, with the social media, we hear a lot of different opinions, opposing to each other. I think that was healthy. That I think reflected some consistencies right there. But then we're back to the fact that when the mainstream media in this country constantly, over a long time, pitching certain voices and the I guess the majority of the Americans believe this reflected all Americans, and that I don't think was truth but a false, by itself. And I believe it was totally against the basic value of journalism. So when people say this is a real journalism, yeah, real for whom, right? So Taoism teaching talks about the relative, and here's where I think perfectly where it applies. Yeah, true for who? If you are the liberals, and of course you like what you hear, and you would prefer to believe most Americans are right there with you, think exactly the same way on the same page. But if you're on the conservative side, you may not agree that is American. So what is American? And basically, I guess in the late 1950s to 60s, there was some allegations about un-American behaviors and speeches. And some people, not just in Hollywood, but extended beyond Hollywood too, they lost their jobs, right? So that was one, I guess, extreme on the right side. And then, of course, we have the extremes on the left side. And then this political correctness thing basically just, I guess, a muffle lots of voice channels. And so it all came out, uniformly, I guess, rather liberal, right? For that is comparing to the conservative values in this country. And of course, now we have the people, I guess the younger generations in this country, the public education pretty much, went with the policy in the, I guess, past few decades of the United States, which reflected the social progress. Let's look at it from the point that American women had the right to vote, and then racially, the Chinese citizens were not allowed to have the cross-race marriage with non-Chinese in this country. But then, that changed. And then, of course, the racial separation, in the school sector and other things, all that changed with the, legislation that followed the change of, I guess, ethics, the values in this country. So I think with the liberal side and the conservative side both exist at the same time. It's just a beautiful yin and yang to keep the perfect balance. But not if, it becomes the violent confrontations. So I guess supposedly the Democrats had their functions in the society as versus what the Republicans were representing, the, I guess, more conservative values. I don't see anything wrong by itself. Both sides were, I guess, existing for a true value. But as of today, I don't really see, that either from the Democrat side nor from the Republican side. So that yin yang is gone. Okay, so I don't know if the Democrats have anything to offer today, regardless if their representing person actually get elected, or on the flipping side, what is the real value traditionally, represent the political stance of the Republican parties? Do we see that from, old Donald, based on his rhetorics and his behaviors? We don't know that. We don't know that, right? So this is exactly where I'm talking about, consistency. And of course, we have to accept the fact any system running you know, for a while, eventually would have some, I guess, things to be fixed so that it can continue to run well. Um, I guess let me throw in my little knowledge about the Chinese history. The reason the Chinese empires, stayed in, you know, their life cycle, typically between a few decades to a couple of centuries. Basically, for about 1,000 years, it didn't matter which dynasty, of which empire came in and then went out, the same system stayed. Why, for 1,000 years or so, there's this stability? It is because there was this check and balance, in the Chinese system. And you're like, wait, check and balance, really? Yes, because in all the Chinese empires, all the emperors were taught since they were little that they have to obey the laws of the heaven. And heaven, in this case, referred to the best interest, the well-being of the commoners. Because you treat them well and they appreciate that, and then you will have a taxation base that actually, continue to produce. And if you ignore their best interest, basically let it go to a certain point, and then they will rise up against you and you will be replaced by a new family that turn itself into the monarch. Okay, so that something did not exist in European history because the divine bloodline, was always well respected. Not in the Chinese system. In the Chinese system, you had your good time, and hey, when it's time to go out, and you go out, right? And most likely they will hunt you down and kill every single one of the last of your bloodline, just to make sure, right? So that's the I guess check and balance there. So the jobs of those Chinese royal court bureaucrats, their jobs, but just one thing, which is making sure all the taxpayers were happy, and even they were not happy, at least their voice could be heard, so that certain royal court policy could be adjusted, so hopefully they could stay happy, right? Because otherwise, once the stability of an empire, the social order is gone, well, that empire is seeing it, the end of its own life cycle. And that was the Chinese, check and balance for the Chinese political power in the form of empires. And so now back to the contemporary United States. When we have this, kind of elite system in the U.S. lawmaker body, they are supposed to be representative of the Americans, right? And then, of course, in the political banners, everybody say, for the American people, by the American people and all that. So who's American? Who is American? Can we accept only the white people are the Americans, the rightful owners, the masters of this country? Of course, nobody dare to say that openly, unless you're some very extreme, political group. And you would not dare to say that in the U.S. lawmakers' place. But if we dismiss that as, the American, so we accept that all Americans, regardless the political belief, the racial background, all that, all Americans are considered Americans and hence equal, right, for the rights. All right, so that's that, right? So if we want to go further in consistency, on one hand, I totally question this, you know, slogan about, Black Lives Matters rather than all lives matter. For me, that's just a reverse discrimination. Okay, so if we're in a society, we have certain group, superior to other groups, regardless the race, the sex, the religious, whatever, then that's just not equal. That's just not fair. And don't use the excuse, whatever happened before, like I mentioned before, whatever happened to the Chinese before, and look at where the Chinese are today in this society. It really requires a lot of, work on their parts. And so this is not because, oh, I'm a Chinese, so I'm just saying this, for the Chinese. No, this is just one example. And then let's talk about the Native Americans, the American Indians. Where do you think they are, right? Rightfully, they were the original owners of, this place. And, are their best, interests well served in terms of education and the, career and there's social standing in this place? Yes or no, right? So do we hear something from them to talk about what happened when their ancestor was, not all, but most of them were, basically slaughtered, just to make space for the white folks, and then later the blacks brought in, the yellow horses were, brought in and all that. There's a lot in his American history to talk about, but if you try to, basically label everything and play that racial card, that is just not fair, okay? And I don't care, it's a black or it's red or it's yellow or it's brown, just, I think if we want America to be great again, we need to get rid of all this, nonsense. It doesn't matter you come from left or come from right or whatever, racial group. Like I said, I do believe we all have the same rights, and our media has been, I guess, significantly biased. That, in my opinion, ought to be, blamed for a fair share of the chaos today. And our education system, who gets to decide what is American value to put there? And then our legal system, or the judiciary system, basically all the way up to the Supreme Court. What is American value? What is to be protected and preserved? I think there's a lot of questions to be asked. So if and when our representatives on the Capitol Hills actually hears us all and, work together to preserve the traditional American value, not just the white, not just the black, not just the Latin, not just the Asian, but, collectively, all, and religiously not to dominate this country with any single religion, as I believe, the way it was supposed to be back, at least then in the public education system. So for me, this is the consistency I, for one, would like to see in the, policy in the system of this country, so that we could maintain the order in a hopefully harmonious society in this country. So this is for this session, and it sounds more, for the Americans, but, I am American. So at least in this session, allow me to be American. Until next session, ciao.